Jesus freak here, and this topic came up a little elsewhere, so I figured I'd mention it. Because this is the best copy of the text of the Apocryphal book of 2nd Esdras I have, I'll probably be consulting this, even though it is an NRSV. It's a bit beat up. I've owned this probably for about close to 15 years now, I think. Anyway, can't find my printed Apocrypha, so I ran this off, so I had a King James to reference. And I'm going to mention some of the problems that I'm aware of. And they go right back to the top. The first problem is as soon as verse 1-2, where there's an actual conflict between the genealogy of Ezra given there and the one in Ezra 7, 1-5. Another problem is that we only have 3 verses of it in Greek, none in Hebrew, and mostly this is only preserved in Latin. And we have evidence that the Catholic Church actually had to rip a page out of one of their manuscripts because it had some issues. Pretty odd that it would be preserved in Latin, not even Greek. Anyway, the first 2 chapters and the last 2 chapters are not always preserved in other translations as well. Which would be pretty problematic in and of itself if you were going to consider the thing inspired. If it's inspired, why is 4 chapters missing in all the translations? Another problem is 3:1, and the source that the King James used was missing a phrase that was somewhat problematic. The phrase, I, Salathiel, who am also called Ezra. Salathiel or Shealtiel is a Jewish tribe of Judah. In fact, he's in the royal line. He's an ancestor of Jesus' stepfather, so to speak. So that he's being equated with Ezra, who's a Levite and a priest, is already itself problematic. And another problem is verse 642, which is infamously, this is the verse that Columbus used to say, he was insisting he was finding the actual India when he ran into the Caribbean instead. And it reads, "Upon the third day thou didst command that the water should be gathered in the seventh part of the earth. 6 parts hast thou dried up and kept them, to the intent that of these some being planted of God and tilled might serve thee." And since it's clear that there's more water than that, that's patently absurd. And the argument's been raised that, well, maybe there's more water than before because of the flood. And I'm pretty sure that it's been stated that the water had to come down to the level that it was at before the flood. About half of chapter 7 was ripped out of one manuscript, and most copies that you'll find, this piece is missing. This is missing from the King James as well. Another problem is also in chapter 7, where it's made evident that this is a Christian writing, and thus obvious fabrication, since it mentions Jesus by name in verse 728. Some of the translations tried to rectify this by replacing it with the word Messiah. A lot of the language is also very incongruent with being written in the same period as Ezra and Nehemiah. And there's references to Rome. There's a lot of blatantly Christian doctrine in here that makes it pretty obvious. We're not talking something that was of Jewish origin. Now, it's kind of hard to get past the issue that there's nothing explicitly declaring the 66 book canon in Scripture, that it's kind of, just been accepted as such. And this leads to the issue that you have people who introduce other books into the canon. And right now, the only way I can really justify it is that when we received the Old Testament, we received it with the same 39 books as it has now. And the standard 27 book canon of the New has been, pretty much accepted as standard. But again, best I got is appeal to tradition. And it probably won't count for much with everyone. I'm still going to say what I said about the structure of Isaiah compared to the structure of the Bible at large. And I still stand by my assertion in the authority of the 66 book canon. And I don't believe any church accepts second Esdras. Anyway, Jesus freak out.